Masay, that is Parshas Matas Masay. The mimer that the Rebbe this week is speaking about is from Masay. Siyata Shmaya Shabbos Parshas Matas Masay Beis Menachemov Tav Shechapei. It's also in your Par Malchus. Eila Masay Bnei Yisrael Sheyotzu Meretz Mitzrayim. These are the travels. These are the journeys of the Yidden that left and went out of the land of Mitzrayim. The Rebbe asks the following question. Examines the language that's used over here in this passage. Understand the language and expressions. These are the journeys. That it's in the plural. Why does it say journeys in the plural? It says the masa. Masa is in singular. And it says that they went out of the land of Mitzrayim. You could write journeys because we are going to go through the 42 Masa'is, as we're going to say. But these 42 Masa'is, the 42 journeys, weren't all leaving Mitzrayim. Leaving Mitzrayim was only one journey, but it wasn't 42 journeys of leaving Mitzrayim. Going out of the land of Mitzrayim, it's only the first exit. It's only the first traveled, only the first journey. It's when they traveled from the city of Ramses that was in Mitzrayim to Sukkot, which was outside of Mitzrayim. So therefore, you could write journeys, but don't write Asher Yotzu Meretz Mitzrayim. But if you write Asher Yotzu Meretz Mitzrayim, how does it apply the term Masay, plural journey? It wasn't journeys, it was one journey going out of Mitzrayim. The Alter Rebbe explains, look at the Torah, Shekol Adboim V'Shnayim HaMasois, Nikra Koil Asher Yotzu Meretz Mitzrayim. All the 42 travels and journeys is called that they went out of the land of Mitzrayim. This means Ad Achaniyosem B'Yarden Yerichai, until they encamped by the Yarden, by the city of Yerichai. So then it's all considered. Every single one of those 42 trips, it's all considered, or 42 stops, is considered going out of Mitzrayim. And then the Rebbe adds to what the Alter Rebbe says in Chutei Torah. If we can add to the Alter Rebbe's explanation, the Rebbe says that we see the same concept, that all the travels going from Mitzrayim till they reached Eretz Yisrael is all considered one trip leaving Mitzrayim. It's all considered going on Mitzrayim. We see this from a different pasuk as well. We see concerning the Geula Asidah, the future redemption, when Mashiach comes, it says about Mashiach's times, he made says Chomeres Mitzrayim Aren Neflois, like your days going out of the land of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders, which means and indicates that going in the plural, Kimei says Chomeres Mitzrayim, Kimei Lashon Rabim, in the plural. Isa B'Zohar, like it's brought down the Zohar says on that pasuk, Kayoim ben Boyle, should have said, like the day of your going out of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders in the future redemption, similar to the day of your going out of Mitzrayim. So he says, because they went out at one time, it wasn't multiple days. So the answer is, who the idea behind this is, that just like the Alter Rebbe explains, that from the Yidden leaving Mitzrayim until they came to Yarden Yerechot, it was considered like one long trip, one long exodus, one long leaving Mitzrayim. It wasn't considered they just left Mitzrayim with the first encampment, but rather in the same way, our leaving Mitzrayim until we come to the Geula Asidah is also considered one long leaving from Mitzrayim. Who the idea behind this is Mitzrayim. Ad Geula Asidah from the time of going out of Mitzrayim until the future redemption that's going to come speedily in our days. Amen. And you made says Chomeres Mitzrayim. They are the days of you going out of the land of Mitzrayim. And therefore he says, like the days in the plural. So the Rebbe brings a parallel between our travels all these years since going out of Mitzrayim, over 3,300 years ago, to the idea that the Alter Rebbe says in Chutei Torah about the 42 Masois in the Midbar, that these are all considered going out of Mitzrayim. Derech Agav, the Rebbe uses the same idea in the Haggadah, that that we find this concept really hidden and an underlying concept in the Haggadah, that really we are at present still in the process of going out of Mitzrayim, and therefore it's Hashata Avdin, Sharabab Nechoidim, now we're considered servants, and in the future we will be considered free, and so on. The Rebbe uses it in a few points in the Haggadah. Now the Rebbe brings another idea. Even though the Chutei Torah was talking about the travels going from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael only of duration of 40 years, and the Rebbe is expanding it based on the Zohar to say even to the Geula Hasidah, the Rebbe is going to bring from the words of the Alter Rebbe in Chutei Torah a little bit of a support and a concept where we see a hint in the Alter Rebbe for this concept as well, that it's not just from going out of Mitzrayim until the Yidden reached Eretz Canaan, that was all going out of Mitzrayim, but also we're going to see a hint in the Alter Rebbe's words for the idea that the Rebbe presented, that even until the Geula Hasidah, we are all still in the process of going out of Mitzrayim. So he says, V'yesh loymar, line 15, on this idea is hinted. Also, in what it's written on the Torah, that all the 42 travels, it's all called that they went out of the land of Mitzrayim. And he adds, until they encamped in the Yarden on Yericho. So, how do you see that? One second. The Alter Rebbe adds until they encamped in Yarden Yericho. So the Rebbe is going to be medayik from those words until they encamped on the Yarden Yericho. Over there, look at the Torah is explained B'inyan Bechinas Yarden Yericho concerning Yarden Yericho. So Yericho is related to the idea of the word for reach, scent, Shubechinas reach. It's the level of scent. The Alter Rebbe connects it over there in that mind. So the Rebbe says, by connecting and bring in the idea of Yarden Yericho, that is the level of scent. So already the Alter Rebbe is hinting for this word that the Rebbe introduced now, that all of our travels now are also travels in going out of Mitzrayim until Mashiach comes. Because scent has to do with Mashiach's times. The level of scent is the level that will become revealed when Mashiach comes, like it says in Yeshaya Navi. It's also the Haftorah of Achim Shel Pesach says, "V'harichoi beyiras Hashem." He will give him the scent of the awe of Hashem, the loy lemari ein of yishpoit, and he will not judge by what he sees in his eyes. The Moirach V'dorin, the Chazal explained that Mashiach will not judge by just what he sees and hears, but he will judge by scent. So we see that the idea of scent has to do with Mashiach's times. Chassidus explains, the Rebbe explains in Amorim, because the idea of scent reaches to the deepest part of the person. That's why when a person faints, chas v'shalom, so we use scent to revive him, because scent reaches very deep, and that's the same thing that when Mashiach comes, the deepest aspect of ourselves, of our neshama, will be revealed, and the deepest parts of all creation, Hashem's power and essence, will become revealed as well. So therefore, it's connected with the level of scent. So the Rebbe says in line 23, moving from this understood, by the Alter Rebbe adding the words, and this was until they encamped in by Yarden Yericho, by adding that and saying that all the time from leaving Mitzrayim until they encamp by Yarden Yericho, it's all going out of Mitzrayim. By adding the words Yarden Yericho, that level, top of the next page, of Yericho is the level that will become revealed in the future when Mashiach comes. It's included the entire avoid of the Yid from when they went out of Galus Mitzrayim until the future redemption. All of this is called when they went out of the land of Mitzrayim. You made Mitzrayim, the days of your going out of the land of Mitzrayim, like we brought before, that you made Mitzrayim is referring to the Gula Sida will be like the days of your going out of Mitzrayim. So that means all the days up until the Gula Sida will be the days going out of Mitzrayim. So the Rebbe finds a hint for this interpretation, this additional explanation, that it's not just referring to the 40 years that the Eden spent in the Midbar, that they're all going out of Mitzrayim, but all the 3,300 plus years that we are spending since going out of Mitzrayim, we are still considered going out of Mitzrayim until the future redemption. Any questions?
Is there any articulation anywhere about what each step means, the 42, like there are with the 49 going to Shavuos?
So there is, we'll soon refer to a Torah, the Baal Shem Tov, which I wanted to actually look up last night. I don't have my Sfarm here, and I just didn't get around to looking it up online, about the 42 travels, what they are in a person's own life. But the number 42 relates to 7 times 6. And 42 is the level, the 42 is also the levels of Ana B'Koyach. Ana B'Koyach Gedolos Yemincha Tatir Tzruda, those are 42 words, and that has to do with the number 42, has to do with a level of ascent. 49 has to do with coming down. 42, in other words, corresponding 6 times 7, I believe, is talking about the spheres of Chesed through Yesod. In other words, you have 6 spheres times 7, the way each one has. You don't come all the way down, it's the other way around. I believe it's going up from Yesod to Chesed. I don't remember exactly, but the number 42 does have to do with ascent. And therefore, in a general way, the 42 encampments, I don't remember specifically seeing a correlation, but it may reflect that as well. Ana B'Koyach, by the way, which has to do with the number 42, has to do with a Shem of the Eibishter that's called Membez. And when we recite it, usually whenever we're transitioning in davening, when we're transitioning to different level, we use Ana B'Koyach. That's why we say Bakrish Shalomita when we're going upwards to Shemayim. We say it before Tchiyas Shofar. We say it before the onset of davening Shachris in the morning, etc. Ana B'Koyach is that, in a way, like the 42 levels of traveling upwards towards the Eibishter. But again, I've said a lot of things about the number 42, but I did not remember seeing specifically this being applied concerning the literal 42 encampments. This encampment is that sphere, that encampment is the other sphere. I have not seen it. Maybe there are Svarim, Kabbalah Svarim that speak about it. I don't know.
Thanks.
Okay, yes. Top of page Vav, is Beis, line 5. Hini Yadu Teres Baal Shem Tov, known the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Call our boy Mishnayim Hamasoyas, all the 42 journeys that the Eden went through in the Midbar. Yeshnam Bechol Echad MiYisrael B'Meshach Mechayev is to be found in every single Jewish person throughout the days of his life. Shas Kol he meets the beginning of these travels is from when he exits the womb to the air, going out into the world, which is really just like going out of Mitzrayim. When the child was not yet born, when he was still in utero, he was still confined. He was in boundaries. He was in a confinement state. Therefore, birth, leaving that confinement, as comfortable and as wonderful as it is for the baby, is now an exodus from that confinement. That's step number 1. That's the first step, the first travel, the first journey is like the journey of the neshama coming into this world. But Mesha Kol Yamav, and throughout all of the person's days, Yeshnam Kol Pratin Yonam Esois, there's all the specific matters of the travels. Elam Maseh, these are the journeys going Ad Shebol Yardin Yerechai, till the person arrives at the Yardin by Yericha. What does that mean? that every person reaches that level that we mentioned before from the Alter Rebbe, that becomes by him the perfection and the completion of the idea of scent. Scent, we said before, is a level that has to do with Mashiach's times. Obviously, it's not in the same way like Mashiach, but it's one of the stepping stones and one of the combinations that bring about Mashiach. Until from each individual reaching that 40-second journey to reach that level of scent. So then each individual, part of the whole now, impacts the entire whole, and the Klal Yisrael and reaches that level, and the world in general reaches that level, that he will give him the scent of the awe of Hashem, Moirach V'doin, that he judges based on scent. Like it will be drawn down, revealed down here below 10 handbreadths, but Gula Mitzvah Shleim, the true and complete redemption. The Bias Mashiach Tzedkenu Bekar of Mamish, in the coming of Mashiach Tzedkenu, speedily. So now the Rebbe connects it with another question that's brought down about how Moshe Rabbeinu transcribed these travels. Yes, the kasher in Yinzem, and we can connect this topic that we just now learned about. The 42 journeys that's to be found in the life of every single Yid. That also is what's leading him towards Mashiach and leading the world towards Mashiach. In Mashakasa, with what it's written by Yichtov Moshe es Moitzaehem lemasei, that Moshe transcribed, Moshe wrote down their leavings for their journeys. By prefacing the question of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe has a question that he asked, we need to understand. Initially, when it speaks about what Moshe transcribed, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Moitzaehem Lamaseehem. They're going out to their and for their journeys, according to Hashem. And then the pasuk concludes, and these are their journeys for their going out. And then afterwards, he flips it around and he says, these are their journeys to their going out. So why does he begin first with going out and then journeys when Moshe is transcribing it? And then when it's actually listing them, right before he starts listing, he says, and these are their journeys for their going out. The point of explanation this is, you might say, what does this mean? They're going out. This means where we came out from, where we are being extracted and going down from. It's the source of Neshamas Yisrael. Similar to what it says in the Navi, like somewhere that gives forth water, a water source that the waters will not be false, meaning they will not cease. When you have water coming not from a source, you have whether a pitcher of water, you have a reservoir of water, you have a cistern of water, like was in Eretz Yisrael in the days of the Nevi'im and so on. There were like storage cisterns of water. They used to gather water during the rainy season and store it in cisterns, etc. So these are all waters that can be used up, and they are used up. Therefore, they're not consistent, they're not solid, they're not constant, they're not always there. But in regard to what we're talking about over here, we're talking about the source of Neshamas Yisrael, the way that Rebbe is applying this pasuk, that it's from a place, just like if you have water from the aquifer, you have a spring of water over there, the spring of water is always flowing, is always giving, it doesn't stop. The same thing, the source of the Yidden is like a spring of water. We say this also, many Amorim we bring down, it says, Mayin Ganim, spring of the Ganim, which is going again in Elyon, Gan Tachten, where the Neshamas come from. So it says, Misham, and from that level, the source of Neshamas Yisrael above, that is everlasting and always ongoing and doesn't become used up. It says, and from there the Eibishter drew down a ray and a revelation so that the Yidden should have the capability and the empowerment to rise up and go from below to above. That this is for their journeys. That which is being drawn down from where they came from, that it's coming down a revelation, it's coming down from their moitza, from the place where they came out from. Is for the sake of their travels. What he means to say, and the traveling and the ascent that's from above. So again, just in short, Moitza is the energy that comes from above. The Masa'ayim to their journeys that they can return and they can elevate from below where we are now. That is the first part. Moshe transcribed what they went out from for their sake of their journeys, drawing down the revelation from above or the ascent from below. Line 31, afterwards it says, these are their journeys for their going out. Meaning, now it is how far did their journeys reach? Their journeys reach so far until they go all the way up to Moitza'ayim, back to their source where they came out from. The Nimtza comes out, that in Eilamase, Moitza'ayim, Lamasayim, going to the top of the next page. They're going out to their journeys, and then afterwards, Masayim, Moitza'ayim, their journeys to where they were going out from. Nirmas, Klolos, Avoidas, Adam, Mechayav. It's hinted the general service of a person throughout the duration of days of his life. Beginning from the descent of the neshama from a high roof. That is the root of the neshama. That's the source. That's the moitza'ehem. That's where it's coming out from. And after that very high source, that one would say has to do with the hayrehi, the neshama, the way it's in a state of being pure. Then afterwards, that state of purity, that moitza'ehem goes down. Also, you created it with chulu, and then you formed it, and then you blew it into me, like we say every morning in brachas. Until it descends to a deep pit. That the deep pit is this low world. Since there's nothing beneath it, there's nothing lower than this world. Therefore, it's called a deep pit. In other words, it's I don't remember if I saw this here in this mimer. Later on, the mimer, does he say it? I'm not sure, but it's brought down that it's like a double expression. It's not just he's going into a pit, he's going into a boyer, but he's going into a bira mikta, a deep pit, which shows that it's not just a tachten, it's not just something down here below, but it's something that there's such a lowness that there's nothing as low as Visham and over there in this low world, it does its service. So that is the moitza'ayim, the masayim. It goes out from its very high level from Tahirihi, Tata Barasa, until it does its avoid very low down here. And after it concludes its service, there is an neshama, the neshama return. And it arises to the source where it was hewn out from, where it was carved out from. That is the Masa'ayim, the Moitza'ayim. Its journeys to its travels above. Its journeys and its travels to where it came back out from above, returning to that source of Tahiri. Any questions before we go on? Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to take this a step further. And he's going to say, as we know, that there is the Yerida L'Tzorech Aliyah. And essentially, he's going to lead this into Ois Hey. But because every Yerida is for L'Tzorech Aliyah, every descent is for the sake of an elevation. So it can't just be that the Moitzaehem in the first part of the pasuk is the same Moitzaehem at the end of the pasuk. It won't go out Moitzaehem L'Masa'ehem just to return L'Masa'ehem Moitzaehem to go back to where it came out from. But before that, he gets into a topic that we've had in previous Maimorim not too long ago. Ois Daled, second paragraph on page Zayin, line 10. Mamshel Levayr and the Alter Rebbe continues to explain. What it says that Moshe wrote. So it says Moshe wrote Moitzaehem L'Masa'ehem. That Moshe was the one that wrote it down. Meaning like this: in addition to the travel and the idea and the concept that the neshama comes down all the way from its source down here, we said, if you remember, that he is mamshech ha'order, so they should have the koyach to go above. In other words, there's two things. There's one thing, the actual trip, that there is mimoitzaehem l'masa'ehem. There's the trip of where they went out from to go the journeys down here in this world. For what? So they should be able to have the journeys to go up and back l'moitzaehem. But if you remember earlier, he started saying the words that he drew down a order so they should be able to have the koyach to go above. So in addition to the idea of the travels that the neshama actually traveled from above to below, once the neshama is down here below, there is drawn down upon it, it's drawn down upon them the level of this ray from above. That is the idea of Vayichtov Moshe, that Moshe transcribed the transcription, the writing down of Moshe is drawing down from that level of the neshama that was originally in Moitzaehem to bring that koyach into the neshama down here the way it's in Masa'ehem, so it should be able to have the empowerment and the capability to go up from Masa'ehem to Moitzaehem. We'll continue in this tomorrow, Metzashem.